Welcome to the Arts to Hearts podcast, a show where we take a peek into the hearts and lives of our favorite artists. From running a creative business and practice to mindset, we talk about everything that goes behind into making a life and a career that you adore as an artist. Think of this as your happy hour with your favorite artist in your studio. Hear them share the messy and the wonderful side of creating and living a creative, heartfelt life within and outside our studios. As you tune in, be ready to be inspired and encouraged. I'm your host, Charuka Arora, an artist, designer, entrepreneur, and founder of Arts to Hearts project. Thank you so much for being here. Let's jump right in. Erika, can you introduce yourself, who you are and what you do?
Yes. So my name is Erika B Hess. I am a painter, podcaster, curator, and I'm also a mother, which is something I talk about a lot on the show, is being a mother artist and balancing all of those things. So my background is a little of, I have been painting seriously since 2007, I would say. So I went to undergrad and then I went to graduate school at Boston University in Massachusetts in the United States. And that is where I really began to kind of dive into painting and create work. And over the years, my work has changed, and I'm sure we'll kind of dive into that a bit. But it's also where I started to be interested in community and creating community through the arts. So now what I do is I still paint, I run the podcast, I Like Your Work, and I love to talk about all of those things for all the other artists. Mm-hmm.
I want to dig in. I have so many questions and I want to ask so much about, of course, I Like Your Work and your work and everything else that you've been doing. But before we go and dive into that, I want to ask, how was your early years? You mentioned that you did your grad school. Where were you born? How did you grow up? What were your culture like? Did you think you always wanted to be an artist, or was this something that just happened?
Mm-hmm. Great question. So I was born in Ohio, and I was born in a really small town. I grew up basically like in the country. So loads of trees, not a ton of culture around. And it was a really great childhood, in that it was filled with a lot of adventure that I created for myself, which is why I feel like I paint a lot of trees now, because that's kind of where I was going on these hikes, going on these walks. I grew up with my brother, my sister, and my mother. My dad wasn't really in the picture, and that is something that also really kind of affected me in growing up, because I was in this small town where I felt like everybody's parents were married, everybody kind of like really fit in. And not only was my dad not there, but he's from Germany. So he had immigrated to the United States in like the late 60s. And so my father was European. They were divorced. I was in the arts, and while I had a really great experience and had friends, I always kind of felt a little bit on the fringes. And that is really how I started to dive into the arts as a kid. It was a talent I had, and it was recognized. And it's where I felt not powerful, but I felt like I had a say. And so I spent a lot of time in the art room. I spent a lot of time in that. And it's also how I realized that while I'm an extrovert in terms of like, here I am, I love speaking to people, I'm also a really big introvert, and I needed time by myself. And so I could get it through making work.
Oh my God. I can so relate to that. To that. 100%.
I know. I feel like people think if you're a podcaster or something that you're extremely like extroverted all the time, but I feel like it's you can talk to people. We love doing it, but we also have to have time.
Yeah, and I think another thing is that I can only do this because it's you, because the kind of people that I'm talking to, and I think I need that frequency, and when that matches, this is what happens. But I cannot be this person with everyone. I mean, generally, I would want to keep to myself because I may not match the same wavelength. But when it comes to people, especially if interviewing and speaking to women artists, and that's something that tricks you, that triggers you, and like tickles you. That, oh yes, and that opens up entire box.
I totally agree. I 100% agree. It's such a joy to be able to talk to other artists and women who are involved and interested in what we do, because it's a kinship. It's an understanding of how the other person kind of works or what they're dreaming about or interested in, and that is definitely something I feel when I was doing the podcast. What's actually interesting is when I finished high school, I went off to college, and I originally started studying, what is it? Not communication, public relations. I started studying public relations.
That makes sense.
I know now it does, right? It's so funny.
Yeah.
I was an art minor, but I had this idea that because art was something that came very naturally to me and that I'd done my entire life, that meant I needed to do something else. And
oh my God.
yes.
Oh my God.
And I feel like a lot of us feel this way, right? I mean, did you have that sensation yourself?
100%. I, for the longest time, thought so, because I was born and brought up in India, and we had this cultural thing like, girls are creative. They paint glitter, or they paint, or they sew, and boys are athletic. So I had this, I felt for the longest time that I am very normal, and I, like any other woman, any other girl, I'm just creative, and it's not another skill set I have. It's just something that everybody does.
That's so interesting to think of it in terms of that. You're like, okay, everybody does this. And you take these things that are very special, things that we are very talented at, and it kind of undermines it, right? Because you're like, okay, everybody's good at this. And mine was similar. I was like, well, because I'm good at this, it's probably not a big deal,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I heard this artist speak, and I'm really wish I could remember their name. I'm going to have to go back at some point. But what he said at the end of his lecture was, don't discredit what you're good at. Don't feel like you have to change it. Other people are not good at what you're good at. So just lean into it. And it was so powerful. And it was at that time, years later, that I realized, wow, that's what I was doing when I was younger. I was discrediting my natural talents. I didn't think that they were worth a ton. I was like, oh, everybody could do it. But then through the process of taking these various classes at undergrad at my college, I spent all my time in the studio. So I was like, okay, let's just do this. I'm going to keep doing it. So yeah, I ended up studying painting. I had fantastic mentors. I mean, I actually just saw one of them yesterday. They've been so supportive of me through my undergraduate career and beyond. Glenn Sebulosh and Diane Fitch are their names. They're incredible painters, and they put a high value on painting. And they made me feel like what I was interested in, what I was doing, had so much value. And so they really encouraged me to go on to graduate school, and I applied, and I went to Boston University in Massachusetts. And there I met friends that I'm still in contact with. And I did have a community. I had a great community of people that just wanted to be in the studio making all the time. We just wanted to talk about painting. We wanted to talk about what we were creating. And it was there where I started to begin to understand not just painting, but then of course the art world, and like where I was going to be going out into the world to be a part of. And that was really scary for me to make the switch from, being in school, so undergrad and then graduate school, to moving to New York City, where you could throw a stone and you'd hit an artist. I mean, like, it's artists everywhere.
I still can't imagine how would that feel, because oh my God, I would be so happy to see that. I haven't had that experience yet.
Yes, it's an amazing experience, but I think it's also an overwhelming experience for so many of us because we're so used to this different type of realm, And so there's lots of ideas, there's lots of things happening. And I was there for about 2 years, 2.5, 3 years, working as an artist assistant for incredible artists, all women who also helped me understand, quote unquote, the art world and what I was going into. Because while I loved my experience in school, school, it was very much focused on creating work, which has definitely helped me. But I didn't have the understanding of how the art world worked. How do galleries work? How do I do this thing? Like, how do I actually continue?
Yeah.
And so my experience in New York with these awesome artists was really what taught me. It got my legs underneath me, my art legs,
Yeah.
if you will, for how the
I
rest of
think
it worked.
I think sometimes when we see these people and, it just reassures that if it's possible for them, if they can do it, so can we, so can I, so can you. Uh, okay, before we get into that, I want to ask one more question about your growing up, which is, did you have like anyone in your family which was creative, or because it's not only being an artist that's a big part of your identity, but also as I think as a community person, a people, um, I don't know what word we would have for us, like a podcast. I think it's podcast is just, I mean, of course, holding a podcast, but it's so much more than that. It's so much more. Did you think, like, was that something that you really had to find your calling for, or you had examples that you saw and you felt like, okay, this is possible?
So growing up, I was pretty much the only creative person in my family. And sometimes I'm kind of jealous when I talk to artists who are like, oh, my mother was an artist, my grandmother was an artist, like all these artists. I did not have that. In fact, my mother used to joke, like, I don't know where you came from because I don't know where this talent came from, The only one person in my family who was creative that I had contact with was my cousin in California. And I would count down the days for him to come visit us in Ohio, because what we would do the whole time is have drawing contests. That's all we would do. We would just draw and draw and draw. And it was so great.
Oh,
Because I would try to get my brother to do this with me, but he was always like, I don't want to
and
draw
you
with
wouldn't.
you. Like, yeah, like
I'd
you're
rather
always
go
going to
out
draw
and play.
better. Yeah. So no, I would wait for him, and we would have such a great time. He still makes work. He's in a different kind of realm in the arts as myself, but we both still are creative. And then in terms of podcasting, no, I never really saw somebody that was doing it that led me to it. It was more of I attempted different things that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And then I got to podcasting. So in grad school, I was creating like these zines. It was called it was called The Mustache Kitten for the
Oh, wow.
overeducated and underemployed.
Oh, what a brilliant idea.
Yeah, and I wanted to do these artist interviews in it. So it was all written. It was all very like almost like grunge, punk, DIY, all of that. And it was a lot of fun. And I didn't sustain it because it was a lot of work to be like, printing it and getting all these different interviews in there. And then I started a blog with it, and it just never really gelled. And it wasn't until I helped start the space Musa Collective, which was a collective of artists in Boston, where things started to come together. And that led to the podcast. Mm-hmm.
Another question is, you have been someone who's continuously, you've been doing this for 4 years, and I'm sure it's podcasting as common as become today, as important a medium it has become today. I'm sure 4 years ago, it wouldn't have been the same. And I know for a fact that podcasting hasn't been your first venture when it comes to community building. You've been doing that, and you've been passionate about that for more than this. What made you? I feel like I think it's going to be a year in a couple of months for Arts to Hearts podcast. I think when you must have started, it must have been a very big leap of faith and such an unexplored world. And podcasting is a lot of work. I'm sure, Erika, you would agree to that.
Oh, yes.
So, how was that? Because it's such a big move 4 years ago. How did you figure that out and you took that step?
Yeah. It is funny how much things have transitioned in 4 years. with all technology. I mean, of course, the lockdown
Yeah.
and everything has had a lot to do with that. But yeah, 4 years ago, there was a few things that happened that really led me to podcasting. One was Musa Collective, which was 12 artists and myself. Me and two others were the co-founders of it. And we really just wanted to have a space to exhibit our work, to have conversations, to talk about what we were doing, to build community. And it was such a great experience. And while I was doing that, I'd also had my first child. And that was a really life-altering experience for me on a lot of different levels. Of course, emotionally and spiritually, but also professionally. And professionally, what it meant to me was I'd always been afraid to have kids because I thought
I know that.
I thought it would end my career, you know?
Yeah. You've been very vocal about this.
Yes.
And I know, yeah.
It was really hard for me. It shook me on a lot of levels. And I almost felt like because I had a kid and because, I was an artist, I really wanted to do more and connect more. So those two things led me to wanting to start something else. I felt like there were so many artists who were getting overlooked, who were making fantastic work. There were so many artists that don't get airtime or who we never hear their story. And I thought that was quite a shame. I know a lot of these artists. So originally I was going to start a blog. That was the goal. I was going to start the blog.
Which would have made more sense 4 years ago. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, we know it was a good, it was more practical, seemed more working. People knew logistics for it because podcasting was another unexplored world that people hardly knew anything about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was like, this makes sense. Except I felt really nervous about writing. I felt like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to put myself out there every week writing about work? And then I thought, I love talking to artists. I love being in people's studios. It's very natural for me. And I was listening to some health podcasts at the time and I was like, I should just start a podcast. So
you were way ahead of your time, let me tell you.
I know. And well, the funny thing was at the time, I mean, thank God this has changed now, but at the time there really weren't a lot of women podcasting about the arts, And I thought this is a shame. Or the podcasts that we're finding were very academic and I didn't want to have an academic podcast. I wanted something where I talk to people about their life and how do you do this thing? How are you sustaining your life? Because the more we can empower artists to be able to understand how all the pieces fit together and learn from people that have done it, the more artists that are going to be in the world. And that would be a joy to me. So that was really where the podcast kind of came from.
Yeah, firstly, a big thank you for doing this because for sure, this hasn't been something that you've done for yourself because I like your work. It's been such a great resource for our community. I know for all, I know we share a lot of similar communities and I vouch as a listener myself that I don't think if you would have not taken that leap of faith, I wouldn't be sitting here. So,
Aww.
I mean, a big thank you to you. But let me address another very important question because I really need to ask you this. Because I face this and I know so many people who choose actually, who feel called to just not being just an artist and feel called to do something just more than being in the studio or being alone. I feel like it's still a hard topic to address today and to get over those inhibitions or stereotypes. 4 years ago, when you decided that you wanted to, just not be an artist, but also take one step further and maybe build a community, start a podcast. And because I even today feel like, am I drifting away? Am I getting defocused? Am I losing sense? And I truly love what I do. I so love it. But again, because we're taught these realms, like we're given these definitions. And how was that for you? Did you have these fears? If you did, how did you overcome them?
So first, I want to say those fears that you're describing are totally there. I think that things are shifting as we have more space and there are more ways to create. But I had those fears, and oh man, did I majorly have them when I was a bit younger. So after graduate school, I dabbled in these things, but I was really afraid of them. And I think that's why they never really took off, because internally I was battling this fear that said, artists are in the studio and that's it. If you are really an artist, you are not going to do these other things. You don't care about these other things. It's all about the work. It's all about the paintings. It's all about that. There are no other things. And I slowly started to tear that down for myself through a couple of different ways. The first one was, I'd been living in New York City. I was an artist assistant. I was doing like all the things an artist is supposed to do. And I was really broke. And I was living the broke artist lifestyle. And it was hard. And I had a job opportunity to work at University of Michigan in the art department as a full-time employee with benefits, with everything. And I decided to take it. And that was the first time where, I really freaked myself out. I was like, oh my gosh, real artists don't take these full-time jobs. Like real artists don't do these things. But I knew it was the best choice for my life. I need to pay bills. I needed to do all these things. And so I took the job, and it was the best decision I made. I learned the things that I use now for the podcast and for my personal studio practice, just organizing, being able to do all of these things. And the job was fantastic. It was kind of like the perfect artist job because I traveled. They'd send me like all over the country in the United States, to meet art students and to talk to them and to help them build their portfolio.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And I was paid to do all of this. It was awesome. I ran their summer program. So I learned a lot of skills about how to run artist spaces, but that was a huge leap for me. The second thing that I did that took me out of this fear was having a child, so I did two things that artists were told not to do, and the world didn't end for me. In fact, it got better. So I was like, all right, let's keep doing this, and I think the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, like, again, we all have different gifts. We all have different strengths. And to deny them is really to do yourself a disservice. And you will be unhappy. You will be miserable. You will feel it in your body that you're not doing the things that you're supposed to do and that you're trying to fit into a different category or a different space that maybe you just really don't want to be in. But you've been told you should be there. It's like the really great party that you're told about, and you get there and you realize, oh my gosh, I have nothing in common with all these people. I don't want to be here. Why am I here? Why am I making myself? So that has been really powerful for me in just I don't want to say letting my feelings lead, because it's more than that, but it's really following what lights me up and following what feels right to me and not what I've been told is right.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I myself will have to listen to what you've said a couple of more times and re-listen this, because it is so important. I feel like since the beginning that we've been talking, I feel like I relate to every little bit of what you said. And of course, I feel more supported and more, I feel like I can confide in you because, of course, you've been doing this much longer than I have. And I feel like, it just feels so, because sometimes you need to know that that it's okay to not fit in and to want things differently. And I remember, like, I was having this call here today with Kat in a mastermind, and I genuinely shared this with her and with our group that sometimes when I started the podcast, I had no clue how much work it could be. And honestly, I did not even think it would become this thing that it's become today. Arts to Hearts would become this. But it just went. And even today, I feel like I feel very passionate about doing it. But I had to put my practice on the back seat. Like, I couldn't be in the studio all the time. And even if I was in the studio, there was your mental blockage, your mental blocking, your mental time is so much that gets affected. And it's not that, it's this over that, but it's just that at some point you have to prioritize something. And I started getting this fear that, am I doing something wrong? Because I am putting so much effort into creating these opportunities because I truly enjoy. But am I not doing enough as an artist? For you have been doing this for 4 years. 4 years again is a long time. How have you, now you've spoken about your podcast, how you've managed it. Let's talk about how Erika as an artist and Erika as a podcaster, as a founder of I Like Your Work, how has, and I think I want to ask this personally for myself because I am looking for answers. How have you saved these two and kept your identity? Because it's not for someone else, it's for us. How have you kept these two identities and brought them along together in these past 4 years?
So I think this is a really great question, and it definitely relates to what we were just talking about being multifaceted and interested in different areas. And you can be interested in these different areas, but then how do you bring them together so that they make sense and there's balance and you're doing what you need to be doing? Because you're right, one can start to overtake the other. And I don't think that there's ever going to be a perfect balance between them, but bringing them together so they make sense. So for me, what I've discovered works is really thinking about things in seasons. And I was actually taught this by an artist that I worked for in New York, she was a teacher and she also wrote. And there were seasons when she'd be making a ton of work. And then there would be a season where she would be writing more or teaching. And I thought, oh my gosh, this makes sense. You think of it as a year. We have seasons in a year. And what am I going to be doing when? And I'm still refining this, to be honest, because my kids just started school at a whole new level onto things that are happening in my life. But that helps me right there. So I know, for example, around certain holidays, I'm not going to be in the studio as much. And I'm not going to have as much time to podcast. So I have to try and put that into another area. So it's a lot of time management, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so true. Because the biggest thing is that I have to still get into the studio and make the work, because I started the podcast to really kind of support that. And there are times like right now, for example, we're getting ready to launch season 4. We're creating some new content. And because of that, and some personal stuff that's going on, I have not been in the studio the way I want to be. And I'm starting to really feel it. I really feel it. And it doesn't mean that I'm not thinking about the work, because I'm always thinking about my work. It doesn't mean that I'm not writing about the work, but I have to, at a certain point, be like, okay, I can't do the podcast stuff right now. I have to get in the studio. And that's really been how I kind of try to balance these things. I'll also say I'm really lucky in that the people that I'm talking to, are artists, and it excites me to get into the studio, or I'm learning from them. Yeah. So that's also really helpful in terms of being able to do that. Also, I have a note on my wall that says, the only things you can do in the studio are think, record, and paint. So I try to just do that when I'm in here.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I think because now you're a mother of 3 children. You're a podcaster. You're an artist. You create a lot of, there's so many opportunities and resources that you create for artists. I think this is more than enough to even mention. And I know that there's so many hidden roles that come along with all these roles that we do. I think that's a lot on your plate. You have, you've created I Like Your Work as a great resource, and something that you've been very vocal about is motherhood, breaking that stereotype, how you've shared about and you've had a lot of mother guests, mother artists. I don't want to call them mother artists, but I'm just saying that because I want to attach that. But artists, and you've shared your inhibitions, and how we have fed these stereotypes of what an artist means or how you will become an artist. Would you like to talk about this aspect of your life and how have you overcome this fear? And now you're a mother of 3 children, a successful podcaster, a successful artist, and you've built this amazing, beautiful community. Um, can you share your experience of how did you took that leap of faith and and made this possible for yourself?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll start off by saying, and you've probably heard me mention this many times on the podcast, I never thought I would have children. I thought, I'm a serious artist. I am interested in that. That's my number one priority. And children don't fit into that equation. I didn't really know of a lot of women who had children, although I realize now many do. They just never talked about it, and they were told not to talk about it. So, I hit a certain point where all of a sudden I started questioning a lot of things about the art world and myself. And I started wondering, how much of this is really me? And how much of this is external pressure that's been put on me to make me, behave a certain way or be in a certain world, like patriarchal ideals, etc. And I came to the conclusion through a lot of soul searching and meditating and writing and all of this, that I did want to have children. It was something I wanted to experience. I've always been of the mindset that I want to have as many experiences as possible in my life.
Yeah.
And children, for better or worse, I'm realizing now, like, there's some experiences you don't want to have, but they can happen. I've talked about
You have 3 children.
Yeah.
You have 3 children. I'm sure that you love that part of your life.
Yeah. And there's pros and cons with it, but overall it was such a great experience. And again, I did the things that I was told not to do, and my life actually improved. So I had kids. I moved away from New York City and Boston. And when I have taken these steps of things that, quote unquote, you're not supposed to do as an artist, I've actually had more success. And I'm still making sense of that. But it's interesting that we are given these ideals and these, quote unquote, rules. And when we don't follow them, in fact, our lives tend to be richer because we are following what we want to do and what serves us best. So yeah, it's been a great experience. I have 3 kiddos now, and yeah.
Do you have like anything that you told you're not meant to do that's next on your list? Because I think you're already killing your list.
Really good question. I need to think about that one. I'm sure there are.
I'm so excited to see that, because I'm sure that it's going to open so many doors for so many of us. Okay. We've spoken about I Like You. Of course, I have so many more questions about all of this, but first, let's get to your work. Let's also talk about Erika as an artist. And can you talk a little bit about what kind of work that you make, and where are you right now at it?
Great. Yeah. So I work in oil paints, and I've always worked within oils, making relatively large scale oil paintings. I was trained figuratively. So I was trained from life, drawing from life, painting from life. And I ended up transitioning from that to making abstract paintings for about 6 years. So I was making abstract work where it was really about flipping the picture plane up, flattening spaces, bringing in pattern, and really interested in how the paint was applied. And so I was working on those for about 6 years and really loving the process. But I always felt like the figure was going to come back. I always felt like that was going to happen. And I was like, when am I going to do this? When is going to happen? And it happened when I got pregnant. I started doing drawings. I've always drawn, like I'm always drawing in the background, but I started doing these drawings in my sketchbook from life, of myself and of my body and of my family. So drawing family members, drawing myself pregnant. And I never thought I would show them. They have now been shown, but It was just something for me to do. And as I was doing these drawings to really like mark time and to remember a point in my life, I started bringing the figure back into my work. So at first, it just started as like a figure ground relationship that I started to create. And then it evolved into making these paintings that simplified the human form. So there was a bit of abstraction happening, but that the form was there. And that started with a series I titled The Flower Bearers. And that series was created after my first daughter was born. And, we were away from family. We weren't living close to anyone that we had, was family or related to us. And they sent us flowers. And so I come home with this new baby into this new world and this new life, and all these flowers start showing up. And it was a really powerful and beautiful moment for me, as a way to stay connected to people that I hadn't seen in years, some of them. And right after that happened, there was a death in my family. My uncle passed away, and we came home for the funeral. And of course, for us, there was a lot of these flowers that were surrounding, like the casket or around the space. And what was interesting is I'd already started the flower bearers portraits. So they're paintings of people exchanging flowers, and I wanted the viewer to ask who's giving and who's receiving and why. And when I came back after that funeral and looked at these paintings, I mean, it was crazy how they had transitioned to be read as a condolence, of paying tribute. And I felt really great about that. I felt really good, like that these paintings could flip that way. And so I continued making these paintings, but they began to kind of evolve as my life transitioned and things shifted. And that really leads me to the work that I'm making right now,
which I totally love, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
I think I've messaged you so many times. Every time you would share something, and I'm like, I've been loving the underwater. I think your technique, these paintings have such a, like, they relate. I feel I, as a woman, relate too well to it, because I think I feel that myself so many times. And I also love the technique and, the way they've made. I think they're just beautiful, gorgeous work.
Oh, thank you. That means so much. Yeah, I'm really excited about the water pieces and the puddle pieces and everything that I'm working on right now. And what's interesting to me is they came out of like a really tough season in my life. So I had my third child about a year ago and ended up going through postpartum depression pretty severely. And, there's also COVID happening. I mean, it was just, there was so much, a lot of social upheaval and politics. And I just, I was upstairs nursing my son, and we live across from this pond. And I was looking out there, and there was like these leaves floating on top of the water. And I just pictured myself sinking in it. That's all I could see. And I was just like, this year has gotten to be a little heavy. And so I drew that image, and then I started painting it. And it's led to using water metaphorically for a space of reflection, contemplation. And it's also, I was thinking about it as where we all kind of come from in a way, whether it's in the womb and we have this water that's surrounding us. And so it's become a pretty powerful space for me to explore things that are happening, not just personally for me, but I feel like for so many of us, exploring this emotional ground. And so, yeah, I'm working on a bunch of paintings right now.
I can see the beautiful background.
Thank you. I need to be painting more. I'm like stressing out about it. I have a show coming up. And so I have a lot of really large scale oil paintings that I'm creating for that show right now that deal with water and also wilderness. I think wilderness is a really wonderful metaphor for what so many of us have been through with the pandemic as well, in terms of feeling lost, of trying to figure out our way. And so those are the pieces that I'm creating. Mm-hmm.
Amazing. And I think I just want to add this because I remember, I think, in the one that you posted, which had these green leaves and the woman right in the center of the face. And I was re-looking at that work, or maybe I saw it for the first time just about I think a month later, my mom passed away. And because of the whole baggage, and 2020, I mean, the last couple of months have been nothing but a nightmare. And I think, and honestly, when, a storm like this hits you, I questioned every little thing that I was doing. And well, I think coming back into the community was a little bit easier for me, but coming back into the studio was so much hard for me. I think way harder than I can ever put in words. I think I'm still struggling. It's going to be 4 months now, but I still struggle. But it's gone better, but it's still. And I remember that I was seeing this work, and I was still asking these questions to myself, that what is the point of life, why am I doing this? I mean, all kinds of questions that shake you and shake you down. And like, why am I even doing art? How much difference will that make? And I think in those painful months, every time I saw, for example, I saw the work that you shared, and I felt I did not feel heard. I did not have words. I did not have anything to share. And I felt suffocated. But the moment I saw that work, I felt that pain. I felt represented, and it comforted me in a way that reminded me that sometimes what we are doing is why it's so important, even when the world is ending. Because for me, it felt like the world was ending, everything was crashing. But it's such a good reminder, because sometimes when we're just in the studio, we're just creating the work. Um, we feel that it may not bring an impact, but on the other end, when you receive that work as someone who's consuming it, and the joy, sometimes it makes you laugh, sometimes it makes you feel heard, seen, comforted, and it's irreplaceable. I mean, it's such I truly love that series that you're making. I truly do. I feel so comforted and seen as a woman, and I'm sure that so many other would relate to that.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. I want to say I'm really sorry to hear about your mom. When we go through these things, it's right. There aren't words, and I think you're taken to a space that we don't typically inhabit, mentally and emotionally, and it shakes everything, and it makes you question a lot of things in your life and question the future. And so, I want to say thank you for saying that, and seeing the work, because
Thank you for making.
well, I'm happy that it had an impact, because I felt very and this is something I've talked about recently, but really vulnerable making the work, because I think when you make work out of a space of trauma and pain, and in the art world, things can be, of course, like critiqued, etc. It feels really hard and scary, like, oh, I'm going to put this out there, and sometimes it's hard to separate your feelings from the work. So I'm happy that you found some comfort in that.
I did. Thank you so much. Okay. We've spoken about I like your work, your practice. Of course, both of them. How has the community building, what you do, with I like your work, and of course the wider range, how has that impacted your own practice and your own self as an artist?
It has been incredible. I have to say, the experience has been incredible. Connecting with new artists through interviews, through social media, and it's something that I really needed. Having relocated from a place where I knew so many artists to a space where I did not know as many, and now I'm meeting more and more, which has been awesome. But what I think is incredible, and how the community building has personally impacted me as an artist, is that when I talk to these people who I love I literally like their work. I love their work. And I hear just how human they are, how they're living life just like I am, it's really powerful for me. Yeah. And to know that they're just kind of putting one foot in front of the other in a very similar way, and that they have their struggles, and that they have certain things in their work that they are wrestling with. It brings everything down to a very manageable point for me. And I think that's been one of the most powerful things about the podcast, and what I hope other people pick up from it, is that if this is something you want to be doing, and you're doing it, there's not one way to do it, but many ways. And that it is if you find the right community, it's a very open place. Because I've been in communities that were not as open, and that is a hard place to be.
So sure.
Yes. Yeah. And I know, like, you've been dealing with that, in terms of the transition that you've made from design to art. And I feel like once you find those people, it's like, I just want to, like, hang on.
There's no way coming back. I feel like I think that finding those people, finding the right community, finding that support system. I think I haven't grown as much as I've grown in the past 2 years, because I found those people that I was looking all my life for. And it's made all the difference, all the difference.
It's so true. I mean, it's so true. Even for example, like, having moved and now I'm meeting people just in my neighborhood, like, in that community support has really highlighted to me how necessary it is for people to find others that they can talk to about what they're doing, and about their experience, and grow together. It's a really beautiful thing when you find that.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. I so agree to that. Okay. I can't believe it's been 45 minutes.
I know. I
still have so many questions, but I know we're still tight on time. I want to ask one question, which I love to ask to all my guests, because I feel like it's, again, the idea of Hearts to Hearts podcast is to put the artist in the front. If the world was ending, which we felt for the past year most of the times, if the world was ending, and if you wake up tomorrow, and there were no, there was no string attached, no show, no nothing, even then, what would have been that one reason that you would still do the work that you're doing today, be it your art own practice, or the podcast, or the communication, the community? Why would you still, what is that one reason that pushes you out of the bed to make you do what you do today?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, if it was the end of the world and there were no shows, no stuff happening, I would come in and paint, because there is a space that I can get into mentally when I'm working that I can't get anywhere else. And that space that I start to inhabit mentally and emotionally makes me feel connected to everyone and everything. Like, it's this universal feeling that I can kind of click into, and it doesn't happen every time I paint, but when it does, it's like the best thing in the world. And that is what I would want to be doing. And I almost feel like it would be easier to get into that if there weren't any shows, or I didn't have to show the work. I could just be making and putting things together. And that's what gets me out of bed and into the studio to make, is that feeling that I can kind of get into. Yeah.
Love that.
I hope that answers your question.
I would generally, absolutely it does. And I think I can so understand. And you're right. Now that you're saying that would be such an ideal case, like, scenario, because we would have no pressure at all. And you don't need a style, you don't need a series, you don't need your size, you don't need this medium, you can be anything and you can make anything and anyone you want to be, you can be anything and anyone you want to be. So I love that perspective, actually. Thank you. Okay. Generally, I would move to the next part of the episode, but I have a burning question, and I'm not going to let you go before that, because I'm asking this for myself now. Which is, as an artist, and let's say artists and entrepreneurs, we're creative entrepreneurs and artists. As artists, we generally work together. Like, as in isolation. You bring help, but it's only so limited. um, there's a very refined boundary when it comes to how you want to work with someone, if you want to, but mostly it's a very solo work. Versus if you're running a podcast, if you're running a community, at some point, if you want to grow this more than maybe at a different stage, you need to bring on people, you need to hire people, manage a team. um, how have and in another case, as an individual small entrepreneur, that would have been a very normal scenario. But as artists, we need our own individual space. But as artists and creative entrepreneurs, we also need to be in that space where you manage a team, you need to get things done, because otherwise you're in this whole rabbit hole. How are you dealing with that? How have you grown I Like Your Work? And have you do you like how have you managed these two roles for yourself with I Like Your Work and your own practice?
So I'll start with talking about my practice, which is I started bringing people in to help me build surfaces. That was really the first time I really brought somebody in. And yeah, so I have an amazing person here, Taylor, who is building and priming my surfaces. And that has been incredible and incredibly helpful. And then on the I Like Your Work side, I'm incredibly lucky to have an amazing team of people who I brought in not that long ago. So my producer, Caitlin Carrera, I brought in about 2 years ago. And so we've been working together for a while. And she is actually out of state. So we've never met in person. It's all online.
Wow.
And she has been doing an incredible job editing my podcast, putting it out there into the world, and she runs that. And she also now does guest relations. So working with the people that I bring onto the site. And I've been really lucky to bring on 2 artists who are working with me. Gloria Shows, who I actually met as an artist. I didn't meet her through the podcast exactly. I met her when I was curating a show here in Columbus. She's a printmaker, and she knew an artist that I know from Boston. The art world is so small. And I really loved her work that she was creating. So I met with her a couple times to do a studio visit, put her in the show. And then I was just meeting with her about something else, where all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second, I have been wanting to find an artist to bring on to help me, so we can grow, so we can do more. And she has a bit of a background with graphic design. So she's come on board, and she is doing the design for I Like Your Work, catalogs that we're releasing and subscriptions. She just helps me with content creation. She's amazing because she's an artist, very talented herself. So she also gets the, balance that it takes. And then Rebecca Reeder, who is an artist, a younger artist who is helping me with my website. And she's a fantastic painter. So all of these people are really what is helping I Like Your Work grow and just really take it hopefully to the next level. So it's been nice though, because you're right. As a painter or an artist, you're by yourself a lot. And I like that to a point. And then it's nice to be working with other people towards a common goal. But that is a whole nother level for being an entrepreneur is running a team. There's a lot of work with it that I enjoy, but it's also very different.
I love that answer, because I think no words can justify how two different worlds they feel. And I mean, I can myself relate to that I'm not someone who likes to be in the studio all the time, but I'm also not someone who likes to be with people all the time. So, the kind of work that we do, it's such a great balance that, you can take the time that you want, but then, when you're with people, you can also be with people. But it's also a very tricky balance because, it's just not you are working with people, just you're working on something just when you're working on something. It's so hard to disassociate with something when you're not in the studio, when you are in the studio. So I feel like it's such a learning curve for so many people who dive into this side of their practice.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting world to be in, and the nice thing though is like with being able to just email and communicate that way, uh, and mostly with COVID where we couldn't meet in person,
Yeah.
it's been great just to be able to run teams kind of behind the scenes online. So yeah, they're wonderful though. Huge shout out to them.
Cheers to them.
Mm.
And yeah, I think with COVID also the good thing is that um, it's made this normalized that we can have virtual teams, we can work virtually, and we don't have to we don't have to have the whole traditional concept of working in place and like all of those things. And I mean, there's so many online entrepreneurs who've built successful businesses. And I think I was hearing to Jenna Kutcher's podcast the other day, I think this week only, and she mentioned that she has her entire team built online, a lot of people she hasn't met yet, and she's been running that for years now, and which is such a big possibility for artists like us who don't want to be bounded in a physical space in a 9 to 5 or anything like that.
I love it. And I really enjoy her podcast. I haven't listened to it for a while now, but I was like, ooh, I should dive back into that one. Because there's a lot of great information just in terms of how other people are kind of running what they do, because I did not go to business school,
Yeah.
we're all kind of putting it together as we go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Okay, Erika, I can't believe it's been so fun to talk to you. I am so grateful. Thank you so, so much. I just want to say a big thank you for being so honest and for sharing so honestly. I truly feel so grateful and overwhelmed to have you here today. But the episode is still not done because I have the most exciting part left. And are you ready? Because we'll have a small rapid fire. It's a set of questions. There's no right and wrong. Just give me what comes first to your mind. That's it.
Okay. All right. I'm ready. I'm ready to do it.
You're ready. Okay. I'll count to 3. One thing you want to convey through your work in the arts.
That there is space for everybody, and making work that really talks about your experience is valid.
Oh, I love that. What's that one word that describes you the best?
Rainbow came to mind. I don't know where that came
Wow.
from, but there you go. Okay. That's so funny.
That is an answer of a mom of, I think, either 1-year-old or a mom of 3 children, because I'm sure it has something to do with that. I'm really sure. If you could have a studio anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh man, 2 places came to mind: Hawaii and New York City.
Oh wow. Mm-hmm. Oh wow. You can have in both, I'm sure. So you'll have 3. So you have here, then you have.
I want to make it happen. Let's make it happen. I kind of have a space in New York right now, which just kind of is starting up. But yeah, Hawaii. Let's work on that one.
You're already half your way through. So whenever that's done, please, because I asked this question because then I forced myself onto all my guests that please invite me.
Yes. Come visit. We will hit a beach and then we'll go to Chelsea.
Oh my God. That would be such. I am coming to the US. It's been on my list. I hope this happens this year or maybe next year soon. But I have a list and I have to meet all of you and like visit all your studios and like do all of those things.
Yes, let me know. I'm sure you'll probably be in New York and I have a space up there. So let me know. We'll make it happen. We'll schedule it.
Perfect. I'm making this happen so soon. I can't wait.
I love it.
Okay, my next question. Yes. Your biggest source of inspiration?
Ooh, my biggest source of inspiration is probably my childhood, to be honest. Just kind of crazy, but yeah, drawing on experiences I've had. Yep. On my life.
Life is coming a full circle for you.
Yeah.
I think you talking about motherhood and your experiences as a mother, and then finding that inspiration within your own childhood as well.
Yes, definitely. And other women, I'll have to also say, and other women who really express their experience through their work. That is a huge inspiration for me to see.
Your age when you visited a museum for the first time?
When was the first time I visited a museum? Wow, this is a good question. I'm trying to think. I grew up where there weren't any museums close by or anything, and it was not something that my family typically did. I must have been probably around 8, I think, the first time I went. And I think I went with my mother and aunt. My aunt took me to see a musical, which was really amazing and incredible. And I think we also went to the museum, and I loved it. I've always loved going to museums, but it was definitely not something that I did much as a child, because we didn't have the resources. And in fact, I shared this story years later that I feel like my aesthetic, I call it a trapper keeper aesthetic that I have, like these pumped up colors and all of that, because my visual vocabulary at a young age was formed through these types of experiences rather than going to art museums. So I feel like that has also been really ingrained in me, as this type of hot colored aesthetic.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. It's so important. I feel like I love to ask this question, and I intentionally have added it to the rapid fire now, is because, you know, I was born in India. I did not go to like a museum per se. For the first, I think I was in my early 20s when I first went to a museum, because art in India is not like we're not culturally, craft is very ingrained in our culture, and art in a very different format. But we don't have a culture of going too much to museums. It's not a part of it's a very aristocratic people who are either very have a lot of money, who will have access to these galleries. And like, I live in Agra, where the Taj Mahal is. I try to explain people, but we don't have an art gallery here. Most of smaller towns and cities don't have art galleries. It's only the bigger cities who do. And I want to reinforce this fact, because it does not matter. You did not go till you were 8, or someone did not go who was still 18. I didn't go till I was 20, but we're still here. We're all here. It does not matter at what exposure, how much art school information, how much museums we've seen. We still can be who we want to be, no matter where we come
100%.
from. That's why I asked you this
100%.
question.
I love that you do that, because it's so true. It's so true. You don't have to grow up, like you said, going to the Met every Saturday or something, because that just takes down who could quote unquote be an artist to such a small number of people. And art is here to reflect people's experiences and emotions, and we need all of them, not just a certain section of people's experience. So I'm glad that you asked that question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, like, I don't have an access. I mean, especially because of the COVID, and even then I can't travel a lot internationally, even now. And even if I were to travel nationally, there's not a lot of things that I can have access to. And of course, not something like MoMA or Met. I still can't go there. But I fill my cup via talking to you. I still want to go. And I think that I love talking to emerging, like, living artists, like contemporary artists who are there. I can talk to them. And that's how I fill my cup. And that's the definition of how I want to be an artist, at least for now. I don't know what can happen in another few years. But that, I think this fact that we have to be a certain, like, we need to fall under this certain definition to be a successful artist, or like an artist to be recognized enough. I think I just feel like it's so important to bring these things out there, that, you are a successful artist, you are such a successful person in the field, and you living in a smaller town, let's say, or you're not going to Met every day, or you're not going to MoMA every day, or you don't go to all these places, but you're still doing so good.
I think it's so important to highlight this for everybody, right? It doesn't matter location. It doesn't matter all of these things that we've been told that should matter. It's really being, it's doing the work, and it's being true to your own voice and what you're interested in. And I think that's so powerful. I think it's really powerful to believe that.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. My next question. Your favorite women artist?
Ooh, anybody. What's so funny? Who came to mind is Mary Cassatt, and I do love Mary Cassatt. And it's funny because she does so many mother and child portraits, but I
Of
wouldn't say
course.
that is my favorite female artist. Joanne Greenbaum, she's is such an incredible contemporary artist. I love her
Yeah.
color and everything that she creates. Another person who I just had on the show who I love their work, which is Dana Frankfurt. She makes these really
Oh, yeah.
beautiful paintings that include script.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are just a few women artists.
You have a
Yeah.
long list. Of course, you've been doing this for 4 years. You will have a long list.
Yeah.
But I'm still going to link all of these
Oh, excellent.
artists, and I'm going to check them myself also. So if you're listening to this episode, you can go to the show notes on our website and find all the links. Okay, my next question. Who is your go-to person when you're in trouble or in need of an advice?
Oh, my friend Liz Wick. She is actually not an artist. And I've known her since I was 18, and she collects art now. She lives in New York, and loves the arts, but she's not an artist, but she knows everything about me. So her, and then my husband Jack, who is incredibly supportive and amazing, and loves that I'm an artist and loves what I'm doing and supports it all. Probably him, and my mom. Yeah.
Also precious. I can so definitely. Amazing. Okay. If you were to meet younger Erika today, what advice would you give her?
If I met younger artists today, or Erika today, I would say keep working hard, but relax a little. You don't have to be so hard on yourself. I was so hard on myself. Sometimes I still am, but just relax a little bit, make the work, do the work. You love doing the work. Don't judge yourself as you're doing the work, less judgment, less self-criticism. I think that's what I would tell myself.
Love that. That's such a valuable advice. I think I would take that advice for now also.
Right? Because I feel like what the self-criticism and self-judgment did was stop me from doing the things that I wanted to do. And if I would have been doing them when I was younger, who knows, so.
Yeah. And I think especially, and I think I'm assuming you fall in the same category as I do. As I think, because we do all, like me, Kat, we all have a very similar traits. And we have this perfectionist thing that we want to keep. We get obsessed with what we're doing, and we want to do it in the best way possible. And sometimes it gets over our heads, and we become too harsh, and it becomes so hard to even appreciate of where we are. And it's always about, taking that next step, taking the next leap. And it's so hard to appreciate where we've reached. And it's such a valuable advice, because it's easier said than done, because most of the time we forget that where we were maybe a couple of years ago. For me, I feel like I said I wanted to start the podcast, and it took me a long while. And then one day I was like, I don't care whoever thinks and whatever definition I can break. I'm going to do this because I want to do this. And I'm so grateful because I took that leap of faith. Otherwise, I would have been sitting in the studio corner and very sad about it.
What you're saying is so true right there. It's taking that leap, and I took the leap. We all have to leap to do the things that are uncomfortable, and then once you start doing it, it leads to future leaps. And that's such a wonderful thing, because that's how you start to figure out what works for you. And when we have the judgment, criticism, it definitely stops any leaping from happening, which stops growth, and it stops you from being the person that you're born to be, and fulfilling the things that are important to you. So if there's anybody listening who has those judgmental feelings or criticism, I totally understand. It sounds like you do too. And we just have to learn how to do that self-talk, where it's like, this is not going to serve me. That is not going to let me be the person that I'm doing. That's not the truth, and then just putting your head down and just doing what you need to do to be the person you want to be, and do the things you want to try.
Oh my gosh, Erika, I can't believe it's been such an incredible episode, conversation. I feel like I just can't even believe we spoke for uh, more than an hour, and I feel like we just touched the
I know,
surface, and
right?
I could go on forever.
Well, thank you so much for having me on here. It's been amazing, and I love
Mm.
what you're creating. I love what you're doing, and it's just been really wonderful to be on your show. So thank you.
Thank you so much for coming, and it's definitely a full circle to have you here today. I feel like I'm so happy. I'm really, really, genuinely, really happy, and I want to say a big thank you. And I am here cheering for you for sure for everything that you do. And anyways, I'm always doing that. Before I let you go, I also want to ask you: is there anything that you want to share? Anything that new is coming? Any new thing about your work with I Like Your Work? Any new opportunity that you want to share with the community? And where, of course, I know that where most of our listeners would know you, but if there's someone who doesn't, where can they follow you, support you, and just cheer for you in
Oh,
general?
thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So it's a big year this year. There's a lot going on. With my artwork, I have a solo show coming up at Marietta College, which is a college in Ohio. So I'll have a solo show of the work I'm creating right now that deals with water. So I'm excited for that. That'll be like in February. I also have some work that's being shown at Contemporary Art Matters, which is the gallery I show with here in Ohio. I'm going to have work in New York at a space, a studio space that I'm working in Long Island City. So there'll be some new work, I think probably in 2 months that'll be out there. And then on the podcast side, oh my gosh, it's incredible. We're doing so many great things. I'm so excited.
Wow.
Last year, we started releasing catalogs with our open call because I am a catalog junkie. I love having artwork in my studio. I love being able to like look at all of it and see it and remember it. And so this year, what we've decided to do is to start releasing interview catalogs. So the artists that I have on the show, we are taking their interview and we are going to be editing it and putting it into a catalog so that you can read it and you can also see the work so that if it's something you want to reference or something you really want to continue to read or you have a favorite artist, you can have that in your space. So that's a really new thing that we're doing. And in order to help with that and like to spread the catalogs even more, we just started an I Like Your Work subscription, which I am thrilled about. And it's a year subscription for I Like Your Work. And with that, you get the 4 catalogs that we release for our 4 open calls. You get to apply to our open calls for free. So you don't have to pay the fee or anything. You just get to apply. You also get to have 10 interview catalogs that'll be sent to you throughout the year. So around 1 a month. And we're also going to be sending you monthly emails with downloadable content that we're creating for you guys. And you also get to do a half an hour one-on-one Zoom call with me where we can talk about your work. We can talk about starting a podcast. We can talk about whatever it is that you have questions about, your website. I get a lot of that. So yeah, we get to do a half an hour talk, chat connection with that. So that is our subscription. We like literally just launched this and I'm thrilled about it. So yeah, you guys can check that out over on our website, which is www.ilikeyourworkpodcast.com. You can just click to do the click down for subscriptions. And then you can follow us on Instagram at I Like Your Work Podcast. And then if you want to follow along with me and my artwork, I'm on Instagram at Erika B Hess. And my website is erikabhess.com. So you guys can find us all on there.
Oh my God, guys. This I saw the subscription and I was like, oh my God. So if you're listening to this episode, you really have to go check out what Erika has just shared. Go visit the website. If not anything, I would say just go search I Like Your Work on Apple, Spotify, anywhere, and I'm sure you will be hooked and then everything will make sense to you. So just go take that step and thank us later. Erika, thank you so much. I could give you a big hug right now, but I'm giving you a big virtual hug. Thank you so much. I had such a great time, and I'm sure this will be such a beautiful episode for everyone who's listening and tuning in today. Thank you so much. I am sure we'll do such great more things together because of course I love you. I adore everything that you do. And I can't wait to speak to you soon again. And I wish the very best. And I'm always here rooting for you with Arts to Hearts, of course, and via, of course, as me. And always in awe of everything that you're
Well,
doing.
thank you so much. Again, this has been just such a blast. And I know I'll give you a hug when you visit New York. The studio will be there.
Yes.
So thank you again.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. You can find all the details and links mentioned in the show notes of this episode available on www.arts2heartsproject.com. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to tag us in your stories and leave us a review here on iTunes or any of your favorite platforms. It really helps us to keep the show going. Thank you so much. I'm sending you lots of love and I can't wait to be back here soon again. Bye.